So WWE can't remember how to push its talent, right? Let's just get into it. At WrestleMania earlier this year, we saw big wins for 3 wrestlers that could, and probably should, be higher up the card in the men's division. Right now. Jacob Fatu beat Drew McIntyre, Trick Williams beat Sami Zayn for the US title, and most notably of all, Oba Femi beat, and seemingly retired, Brock Lesnar. Now, of course, fast forward a couple of months to the most recent clash in Italy PLE. At the time of recording, Oba lost a rematch to Brock, Jacob lost his second straight match against Roman Reigns, and Trick Williams wasn't even on the card. Now, this is slightly different from the age-old accusation that is often levelled at WWE that they don't create new stars. I think back then, it would maybe have been more accurate to say that WWE create 1 or 2 new stars to the detriment of everybody else on the roster. John Cena was identified as this talent with amazing star potential, same for Roman Reigns, and ultimately, although it was a bumpy road in both cases, that proved to be correct, but it did get in the way of the rest of the roster. Kind of a too many eggs in one basket situation. But now, even though there 100% will be stars, there will be people in WWE's talent system that have a similarly very high ceiling, because WWE's recruitment process is so large and so vast and so all-consuming, there will be people in there with that same sort of potential. But now, the opposite kind of problem's happening. I'll explain what I mean. Cena and Roman were over-pushed, you could say. They were pushed very, very hard and very, very fast. But now, in the case of names like Oba Femi, like Trick Williams, like Jacob Fatu, they're being under-pushed, quite severely in my opinion. Yes, even Oba. And I will address that, don't worry. And it's not just those few examples I've given, the whole roster is being underpushed these days. But I chose those 3 as an example because they seem to be the ones on the rise at WrestleMania. This is like an evolution of that previous problem. An evolution, or evolution, as we all know, is a mystery, full of change that no one sees. Now, as I said, Oba Femi, you could certainly argue, is being pushed quick enough. Certainly more than anybody else right now. But even there, I think WWE have deviated from what traditionally works. Just in pro wrestling in general. I think Oba's also the most egregiously bad example because his ceiling is so high he should be impossible to mess up. And they might be about to mess it up. Oba's win over Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania was universally praised. It was exactly the right sort of presentation. It also provided WWE with the perfect send-off for Lesnar, who had become a very uncomfortable presence on screens with all the Vince McMahon case going on and all that sort of stuff. Like I say, it seemed impossible to mess up. And then they've started to mess it up. Lesnar returned, attacked Oba, and then won the rematch in Italy. Who was asking for that? Now, I know there's likely to be a third match as well, a rubber match, probably at SummerSlam, but honestly, I don't think that's nearly as impressive as if Oba had just beaten Brock and that was the end of it. Initially, Oba had beaten Brock in stunningly dominant and quite straightforward fashion at WrestleMania. He'd won 1 of 1 against Brock Lesnar. Now, assuming he does get the win at SummerSlam, which I think is probably likely to happen, he'll have won 2 of 3 matches against Brock Lesnar, but then the other one was a loss. And that sort of unbeatable aura of his has already been diminished. Yes, by Brock Lesnar, who in kayfabe is so difficult to beat and so on, but it's definitely worse than the more simple solution. Oba can get that aura back. He's Oba Femi, but not every superstar is as fortunate as him. And I still think it's a shame that these days WWE don't want to maximize pushes. They don't want to put their all behind pushing somebody. It's very unusual. Why would you not want to make these stars look as impressive and as ticket-selling-y as possible? At the time I'm making this video as well, Oba is about to go into the King of the Ring final against Jey Uso. There are theories out there that Brock Lesnar may interfere to cost Oba and set up that rematch at SummerSlam. I think that would be a huge misstep. 1, there doesn't need to be a setup for the SummerSlam match. The motivation is already there. Neither Brock nor Oba, realistically, would be satisfied in character with 1 win apiece. They'd both want to go for the win of the rubber match, And also, I guess, would Brock Lesnar get on a plane just to do a run-in in Saudi Arabia? Maybe it's a bit far-fetched. Not if he's being paid a lot of money for it. We'll have to just wait and see. But back to what I was saying earlier. Why are WWE so fascinated with holding back? With not giving their all? With not throwing their weight behind somebody? We just talked about how, yes, it was only 1 or 2 people at the time, but they really gave their all to John Cena and Roman Reigns and those pushes. To the detriment of everybody else, yes, but there has to be a balance. You have to push some people and make it exciting. Why are we not making it exciting? I think that WWE is high on its own mythology. I talked in my video essay, No More Art, No More Heroes, which it was a different angle to this one. I was focusing on a different sort of thing, but I think this point applies in both cases. WWE here, I think, have constructed this mythology, this mountain that is WWE, and everybody in their system has to climb it, and WWE is the star. The brand is the star. The wrestlers aren't the star. WWE is the star. And WWE, as I said in that video essay, have really narrowed the scope of what it means to be a successful professional wrestler. In WWE's eyes, or the vision they are selling to us fans, and probably to the wrestlers themselves actually behind the scenes, this is the path you have to walk. You have to go through this video game career mode progression from the Next in Line program or the WWE approved indie fed of choice, then to Evolve, then to NXT, then to the main roster, then to regular pay-per-view appearances, and so on. Now, obviously, not everybody walks that exact path, but I think that's the vibe they are very much trying to give. There's also a side quest option where you can go on a bit of an excursion to TNA now, because TNA and WWE are best friends. What is happening there? But as I say, not everybody does this exact path up the mountain, but the overall effect of it is that pushes are slowed down. It all gets bogged down, and there's no rapid rises to stardom anymore. Goldberg would never be a thing in the modern day WWE system. And that is, I think, honestly, because WWE wants to present itself as the top star. You all have to play the game. Nobody is allowed to rise too quickly. That's a risk. We don't want them getting too popular now, which is so counterintuitive to everything that pro wrestling should be. Make stars, and they sell tickets, and then the fans, but no, WWE's changed the game. It's made itself the brand. So preserving the system, preserving the mountain, is way more important than giving anybody a boost. When are they going to be stars again if we are not pushing people the same way? How many times have we called for somebody to be called up from NXT because they have all the momentum in the world, they're ready for the main roster, and then they spend months or even years a lot of the time still bogged down in developmental, when they very much, to us at least, appear to know how to work the hard cam already. They're having good matches. They know how to interact with a crowd. In fact, a lot of the time, a lot of those names in quote-unquote developmental, sometimes they're better than some of the wrestlers on the main roster already. I'm not naming any, I don't want to be mean. Being a successful pro wrestler must be the most difficult thing in the world, full of different things, full of intangibles and creativity and even luck. You need luck to be a successful pro wrestler too, don't you? But WWE these days loves to portray success as a wrestler as something that just involves discipline, hard work, and coachability. Can you listen to the wise road agents and the wise developmental coaches and all that sort of stuff? And I don't doubt that those things, discipline, hard work, and being able to listen to advice, they are definitely factors as well. But there's so much other stuff that often just can't be explained. It's just life. And that's why some people are stars and some people aren't. And WWE tell the fans this as well, now that there's an increased amount of all this documentary style stuff or behind the scenes stuff, social media output, all that sort of stuff. I think quite a lot of the time the messaging implicit in that content is the ones who follow the system and are good students and are disciplined and work hard and do the grind and make sacrifices and are basically role models for the WWE way of doing things. They're the ones who thrive. They are the ones who succeed. They're the ones who follow the instructions from the wise elders. Oh, thank you very much, Bruce Pritchard, for telling me that. Thank you, Michael P.S. Hayes. But then the ones who don't listen to instructions, even though they probably do most of the time, but there's certain ones who've been earmarked for this in a weird way. They're shown to be a liability. Like, quite infamously now, LA Knight in that weird episode of Unreal, which I found to be astonishing. A weird creative decision to include that. Same for Lyra Valkyria, where she's the bit where she's distraught in that same docuseries. The bit where she's kind of messed up in her match with Becky Lynch and she's inconsolable, she's in tears. Why would WWE willingly highlight moments where their wrestlers made mistakes and messed up and then put the blame entirely... Like, they were totally thrown under the bus. The only reason I can think of that they did this, that they willingly diminished the star quality, the positive attributes of their own superstars, the only reason I can think of that they did this was to re-establish, to galvanize this idea that WWE is this, like, age-old monolith with very strict and traditional rules for success. And if you deviate from those rules, and if you don't listen to the wise old masters, then you're not going to succeed. That's what I think they were telling the audience there. Or in the case of Lyra, that's more like the LA Knight side of things, I suppose. In the case of Lyra Valkyria, I guess it's because she was portrayed as out of her depth. But again, that reinforces WWE as the absolute pinnacle of sports entertainment. It's sink or swim, and if you're not ready for it, even though to many of us, we are of the opinion, myself included, that Lyra Valkyria is an incredible in-ring worker mechanically. And she is not the sort of person who would usually find herself out of her depth in such a way. But whatever, man. I'll never understand fully why they did that. Follow the rules and work hard, and you will be one of the ones who succeed. That's the message. Except, in practice, that's not always true, is it? Pushes are too slow, as we've covered. People get stuck in the mid-card or in developmental or bogged down. Talented, electrifying wrestlers with amazing potential with very high ceilings may do all the right things, may work hard, may agree to everything and listen to advice, and still not really rise to the occasion, achieve their potential, or be allowed to. Also, this messaging, this philosophy, also completely ignores the fact that in some very high-profile examples, actually the opposite is often true. Rebelling against WWE, not taking any crap, being a bit of a rabble-rouser, being an iconoclast, has often helped people increase their star quality, including certain major names on top of the promotion as we speak at this very moment in 2026. Cody Rhodes built his reputation by leaving WWE, and of course CM Punk enhanced his mystique, his reputation, by just walking away from the company and burning all of his bridges. But no, in WWE it's all a grind to the top, a slow, painful, hard-earned grind. Not an atmosphere conducive to exciting pushes, or an exciting product a lot of the time. Look at another of those examples I mentioned earlier, Trick Williams. He is the perfect example of a wrestler who would benefit more from a quick, mercurial rise to the top. He's good in the ring, definitely, but I don't think many people would say that he's like a real worker's worker, you know? He's a product of WWE's system, first and foremost. He's an athlete who was molded into a wrestler. And that's great because he has this incredible charisma as well. He's definitely got enough tools to be a big star. But not the type of star who would benefit from longevity, in my opinion. You know, he's not the sort of wrestler who will necessarily boost his profile by sticking around in the mid-card, doing the hard yards, getting a couple of secondary title reigns under his belt, that sort of thing. That's not what Trick Williams is built for. He is not going to bolster the product with consistency and work rate and the ability to drag almost anybody else on the roster to a great match. No, that's not Trick Williams' role. His role should be something far more exciting. He's like The Rock, you know? And again, you could argue that Trick and The Rock, both very underrated in-ring workers, but they're stars, you know? And I don't know, I hate Trick's really charismatic. The Rock may be like one of a kind, of course. I'm not saying Trick has as high a ceiling as The Rock did. But you never know. How are we going to find out, you know? In my opinion, Trick's an example as well of somebody who spent way too long in NXT. He was ready like 2.5 years ago. He was already as over as he was ever going to be at that moment in developmental. The fans were on his side. He had all the momentum in the world. I don't think he's changed too much from what I can see in the ring since then either. But they sent him away to TNA, made him TNA champion, and he then had to learn to work heel. Which again, I suppose that makes him more well-rounded or whatever. But it felt like a huge waste of time. Not everybody needs to be super well-rounded before they can get onto the main roster. And I don't know why they've done that with somebody with as much potential as Trick particularly. Slow grind, you know, climb the mountain. WWE's hard. You've got to be doing all these things. You've got to have more XP before you can get to the next level. It's so tedious. So then when Trick finally did appear on the main roster, he wasn't this all-conquering babyface hero of NXT. He was now debuting on the main roster as an arrogant heel, which again, because he's very charismatic, he could still pull off. But it made him look like an upstart. It made him look deluded and cocky. Whereas if he debuted, I think, as a babyface like a year or however long prior, that would have given him so much more of an immediate boost, so much more momentum. Instead, Trick was forced to claw that popularity back, which he has done, because he's kind of undeniable. Like, he's really, really good. And as I mentioned at the start of this video, he won the US title from Sami Zayn at WrestleMania. Two problems with this, and I'm going to use these as evidence to link back to the point of this video, which is that WWE don't know how to push people anymore. Problem number one, despite the United States title being a step up in terms of kayfabe, another rung on this WWE ladder, outside of kayfabe, I don't really think it is. Where Trick Williams is concerned, I think this is a classic case of somebody being given a secondary title and it actually hinders their progress and it bogs them down. I would rather see Trick without a championship belt right now, but further up the card, having feuds with bigger opponents. No disrespect to the people he has been feuding with, I just mean ones more central to WWE's product at this time. But since WrestleMania, Trick's kind of just been another feature of SmackDown, just another person on the Blue brand, a show which, many people seem to agree, has been in the absolute gutter recently. I worry that this could also be the same sort of thing that happens to Chad Gable, by the way, who of course has just had a huge boost in momentum, is coming off the back of having the consensus match of 2026 so far, and is now straight back in the mid-card in WWE. What's it going to take for somebody to be able to skip a few of those steps and get a world title shot on TV straight away or something like that? I'm not asking for I'm not saying make Chad Gable world champ, have him beat Roman Reigns clean immediately. I'm not saying that, but there has to be something more in that direction. There has to be just a little bit more excitement, please. And the other problem number two with Trick's push, or lack of push, or whatever we're going to call it, the problem with Trick's recent booking was the need to involve Lil Yachty. Celebrity involvement, WWE love it, it goes back to the 80s, etc., etc. I get it, I understand that. But when it was used right, it was always used to enhance the wrestlers, use these people who are famous already to get more eyes on our talent, and then make them a bit more famous as well, you know? And make wrestling in general look important and hot and mainstream and all that sort of stuff, yeah. But by associating a certain wrestler with a celebrity, you are doing something important there. But in modern cases, in WWE, am I the only one who feels like it's been used a little bit differently? It's almost like Trick has been used to enhance Lil Yachty. We don't need to enhance Lil Yachty. He's already famous. Same with Travis Scott, probably the most infamous example, of course. I'm not saying that Lil Yachty is, God, I'm not implying that he is anywhere near as detrimental to the product as Travis Scott was. But who did Travis Scott help in that Cena versus Cody feud? The whole main event of WrestleMania literally ground to a halt so everybody could turn and watch Travis Scott come down the ramp and interfere in the match at a glacial pace. Now, the Lil Yachty case obviously is nowhere near as bad as that. He's a lot more naturally likable, I think. He seems happy to be there as well, seems like a wrestling fan, seems like he respects the environment he's in. So this isn't anything personal against Lil Yachty. Why did we pick Trick Williams, of all people, to pair up with a hype man? This is Trick Williams. He doesn't need a celebrity sidekick. He is his own hype man. But anyway, Trick is still relatively young in his career. He can be salvaged. Oba Femi, he can definitely be salvaged. Jacob Fatu, I am worried WWE have done irreparable damage to him as a star. After winning against Drew at WrestleMania, Jacob Fatu started a feud with the top dog, Roman Reigns. This felt like bad timing immediately. Really, didn't it? Certainly in hindsight as well. Of course we know it now. But even at the time, I remember a few people being like, well, Roman's obviously never going to lose that. It's his first big title defense since beating CM Punk for the belt at WrestleMania. Why are we putting Jacob against him? But even though Jacob probably wasn't going to win the belt from Roman, maybe he could do something cool. Maybe it could enhance his stock even in defeat. He was portrayed as this unhinged menace. What's he going to do? So unpredictable. What he did was lose twice to Roman, once questionably and once pretty decisively, and then be absorbed into the bloodline, and now he's one of Roman's henchmen. And yeah, there's storyline potential going forwards from there, but I think it's storyline potential at a far lower level from where Jacob could be. There's friction with the Usos and stuff. So, when are the bloodline not infighting? Instead of continuing with his push, which he looked primed to do after WrestleMania, I think Jacob's character has been completely neutered, really. Yeah, he beat up Eric Andre recently, you know, but he's not going after Roman anymore, or gunning for another champion on the brand. He's taking Roman's instructions. I know people are going to say, ooh, but he's going to get the Batista push, you know, he's going to turn on Roman and he's going to break out of the bloodline and be his own man and then he'll be a star. And that's a push, isn't it? But there's a problem. We've already seen, it's in the wrong order. We've already seen the feud between Jacob and Roman. It's not like Batista and Triple H had a pre-existing feud and Triple H beat Batista, but won his respect, and Batista was like, I will sit under your learning tree, Triple H. And then, when Batista broke out of... Can you imagine how rubbish that would have been if Batista then broke out of Evolution? It wouldn't have been the same. The thumbs down pop wouldn't have been the same. Jacob's been handed a huge roadblock, in my opinion, a huge obstacle on his way to the top. He's been handed it by WWE through no fault of his own. It's just the booking. Why? Well, I think this is very indicative of a wider problem within WWE. They're scared to take creative risks. Yes, particularly in the case of this video's topic, they're scared to take creative risks with the people who should be the stars of this current generation, emerging and everything, but they're scared to take creative risks up and down the card, really. Triple H seems obsessed with preserving the status quo, with sticking with things that worked for him really, really well, but like a couple of years ago. Or maybe this is more likely what's really going on. Because I think it's partly that, but the reason behind all of that, I think, is maybe that his bosses are encouraging him to stick with, whoever makes the most money without any real thought for the long-term quality of the product. And that's why it feels like everything's kind of back to where it was a couple of years ago. I think it's a deliberate choice. Pieces are kind of in similar places on the roster to back then, but it's not fresh anymore. So it's not as exciting, not anywhere near. For example, Roman and the Bloodline are back on top again, dominating while also constantly teasing this tension and infighting. Cody Rhodes is still being the top babyface, but in a very old school, straightforward, honourable way. Rhea Ripley is the same character she's been for ages now. Same for Liv Morgan, same for Dominic Mysterio, same for Becky Lynch, same for Damian Priest, etc, etc, etc. Everybody's either exactly where they were a couple of years ago, or being told to do the same thing, but like they're worse off because everybody's seen it before. Priest being an example of that. Dominic Mysterio, remember how over he was when he won the IC belt at WrestleMania? What's going on? Even when a superstar tries doing something different, like Charlotte Flair has learned how to be friendly, or Seth Rollins has gone through a phase of wearing a ski mask and then taking it off again. It's all very surface level. These changes, this character development, isn't really development at all. I find it very one note. The thing about plot-driven forms of entertainment with a narrative is that preserving the status quo eventually stops working. We expect progression, we expect change. No matter how good it was at one point, you have to adapt, you have to take risks. Everybody's getting older. The audience will get bored as well. But things don't affect these characters and propel them forwards in any sort of narrative direction as they should, in my opinion. Wins and losses don't seem to affect them. Maybe once in a blue moon, Cody Rhodes was shaken up after he beat Orton and then Orton attacked him at the end of WrestleMania Night 1. But after a while, he was kind of back to just being same old Cody Rhodes, right? Becky Lynch does a good job of selling defeats whenever she loses the Women's IC Championship, but then she's allowed to be in only one of two moods, bragging about being the champion or crying foul play because she's no longer champion. So what is the long-term impact of WWE doing this? Preserving the status quo instead of observing the age-old and very necessary wrestling tradition of, pushing people, creating stars. Well, as a result, I feel like this has led to the company feeling more top-heavy than, I guess maybe not as top-heavy as one time in recent memory. That time in like the real midst of Cena's dominance in that weird period between the Ruthless Aggression era and then the emergence of people forcing their way through like Punk and Bryan and The Shield. In that weird sort of time, we also saw the stagnating effect of just pushing one guy over everybody else. Well, now it's a bit different. Now we're just preserving everything. But the effect is the same. There are so few major stars. And even some of those have been diminished recently as well. Particularly in the women's division, Charlotte's role has been reduced, as has Becky's, as has Rhea's kind of as well. If you're in the women's division, bad luck. If you're in the tag division, it's even worse. So much time and effort is concentrated on a tiny handful of names. Roman, Punk, Cody, Seth sometimes. Is that it? That might be it. Then there's the group below that, kind of. Gunther, whenever he isn't a world champion. Oba Femi now, but we'll see where that goes, and so on. I don't think this counts, though, as like a true upper mid-card. It's not a thriving, vibrant scene just below the main event, is it? With multiple people. Who's gonna rise up next? It doesn't feel like that. I don't think we can really say an upper mid-card actually exists that much anymore. There are these names, one or two, but it's mainly the main eventers and then a considerable gap. Just a word on Gunther, now that he's in that triple threat for the WWE title with Cody and Sami at Night of Champions. I wouldn't actually be too surprised if Gunther does win the title there. And I know that people may then say, well, Jack, come on now, friend. That's a push, right? I think it would be a good decision. I hope he does win it. It'll probably, if he does, I guess it'll involve like Sami getting in Cody's way and Gunther taking advantage. And I think that would be a good booking decision. But if he does so, I really have doubts that it will be treated or booked as well. I don't think he'll feel as much of a threat as he did when he was IC champion or World Heavyweight champion, but I will so happily be proven wrong. But WWE don't seem that interested in doing that sort of thing these days. It's all built around mega clashes at Big Four pay-per-views between pre-established top stars. I can't see Cody not having that belt for very long. Or maybe CM Punk, if, as rumoured, he makes his return on the SmackDown side of things. I don't think Gunther's reign is gonna last. I think he would be in immediate danger. But again, I don't know, and I would very, very happily be proven wrong in that regard. And speaking of CM Punk, of course, he has been taking time off since WrestleMania. And in an ideal world, that should be fine. If the environment is healthy enough, if the roster is balanced enough, then yeah, top stars should be able to take time off now and then, and other people can use that to their advantage, really, fill their place and all that sort of stuff. But now when one of those top stars takes a bit of time off, which seems to be happening quite regularly now, remember, all of these guys are getting older, now it's so noticeable when one of them's not around. Have you noticed that drop-off since WrestleMania? So much of Raw, and particularly SmackDown, feels like filler these days. You'd think, right, Punk's not around, let's find people to fill his place, let's give other people who need the spotlight a chance to shine. Instead, it feels like they're just stretching everything more thin. Compare this to like the Attitude Era or something. I know everybody always mentions the Attitude Era. I know that nowadays, people have actually started to call into question how good a lot of the action actually was in the Attitude Era, but there's a reason that it's always brought up, and there's a reason that it remains so revered. And it's not the match quality, God no. And I don't even think it's for the reasons that we might immediately associate with the Attitude Era. You know, there was chaos and weapons and swerves and all that sort of stuff. No, I don't think that's why the Attitude Era is so revered. I think it's because it felt vibrant and it felt alive. You had the top guys, of course, like I've mentioned, Austin, Rock, Undertaker, Triple H eventually at one point as well, and then an upper mid-card constantly intermingling with them, Mankind, Kane, people like Jericho and Angle. There's motion there, you know. Nowadays, everything feels stuck in a holding pattern. A lot of it feels the same. But then beneath that layer as well, like the tag division felt really important, especially when, you know, especially in the latter Attitude Era when it was like Edge and Christie and the Dudleys and the Hardys. But even before that, the New Age Outlaws were two of the most over guys on the whole show, and they were nowhere near the main event scene. So looking ahead, where does this leave WWE? I think it can be summed up like this, right? Basically, in an attempt to maintain the status quo, ironically, WWE have created for themselves a very unsustainable environment. Not financially. I know WWE makes a crazy amount of money. Like, I understand that. But creatively, I think it's unsustainable. You know? Time goes on. Things should change. If they don't, audiences will get bored. If we're being generous and saying that the Attitude Era began with Stone Cold Steve Austin winning King of the Ring 96 and cutting the now famous 316 promo, the Attitude Era really lasted under 5 years. We are already several years into Triple H's reign as head of creative in WWE. We are approaching that 5-year mark. It's not too far away. And it feels currently like barely anything is happening. Thank you very much for watching. Please do like the video and all that sort of stuff. I've been Jack the Jobber. Do leave your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. Of course, I will happily be debated and proven wrong on multiple points that I've made, all that sort of stuff. That's the very point of this kind of thing. And I hope you've enjoyed. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.